you I'm the real champion. I told you I'm the champion of the world.
Well, it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate.
I ended up getting a pass to get in to see Muhammad Ali in training. And I went 3 days in a row. There was a guy sitting outside with a leather jacket on, and you could see a pistol handle in his leather jacket. And he said, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm going to go in and see Muhammad Ali train. And he said, no, you're not. And he says, the Cavaliers aren't in town. I said, what do you mean the Cavaliers aren't in town? I'm going in to see Muhammad Ali, who's in there. And he says, I can't let you do that. And I said, I guess I'm going to have to call upstairs, which was a total lie. And I just walked to the door and went in. He followed me in and then backed away real quick and closed the door. So I'm sitting in there. I did 3 days of watching him spar. I got a couple autographs from him and ended up sneaking into the championship fight. I wasn't allowed in with a camera, but I knew that going in. And I sat almost ringside for the fight. That fight went like 15 rounds, which nobody believed it would. And it was, the decision was that Ali won. Went back into the dressing room after the fight. And as they were cutting the hand wrap off and it fell in a basket, wastebasket, I reached in, picked it out, and stuck it in my jacket. He signed one leg of the shorts and put a boxing ring on it, stick figures in the ring, and people, dots with a magic marker, people watching the fight, and one guy is on the floor laying like this, and he wrote a line out to the side and said, Frazier. So that was fun. And then he signed his name on the other leg. I also got a boxing glove signed by him. Again, I brought the boxing glove in, Everlast, as were the trunks, and he signed those for me. And then I got Joe Frazier later on, and so I had Ali Frazier gloves signed. So all fun, and it goes on and on. I have a picture taken of me by my sergeant, photography sergeant, with a tooth out. And I got called into the major's office in a couple days, and he says, Longwell, get that fucking picture of you off the wall. He says, that is a violation that is way important, and I could really give you a lot of trouble for that. Just take it down now and don't ever do anything that stupid again. Same size as Lyndon Johnson's picture. So I went out there and I'm walking along with my camera and a medium telephoto lens. And it was interesting. This is in the 60s, and women were wearing halter tops and sitting on top of pickup trucks. And it was just interesting. They had makeup on and were looking glorious. And really, one of the first women I went up to, I said, you haven't seen Paul Newman anywhere, have you? And she said, well, he's right there. And I saw this skinny guy walking along in shorts and a t-shirt, just walking along, and I said, oh my God. So I turned around and I started taking pictures, and I started following him around. He was getting aggravated, and I could tell that. And he finally went, I think, to escape me. He also heard that National Enquirer was going to be there that day. And so I think he was particularly concerned about photography. So he ended up walking over to the stand. It was a well-built stand up in the air over the racetrack. And he went up, and I climbed up the steps behind him. And he put headphones on, and he's listening to whatever he was listening to from the track. And he turned around and he said, "You're driving me up a fucking wall. Get out of here." And I did. So that's how that one went. So I heard Diana Ross and the Supremes were coming in, and I talked to this guy that worked for me who was a recovering alcoholic. Got a good story to tell about that too. But he was a recovering alcoholic, and I said, "How do I get behind the grandstand? What kind of badge do I need? And how do I get there without having a problem getting in there into the fairground lot where the grandstand is?" And he says, "You need one of these." And he had a green button on. And I said, "Would you let me borrow it?" And he said, "Sure." But he said, "The only way you're going to get in there at the time of shows is if you're doing something in a John Deere tractor back there, that like you're loading something or doing something way before the show starts." And I said, "That's what I want, but I don't know how to drive a John Deere tractor." So he says, "Come on, I can show you." So this is typical wrong wrench. He starts up the tractor and he shifts it and everything, and then I get in and I get it into first gear, and I'm going kind of jerking along like that, and I said, "Fuck it, I'm going." And he goes, wait a minute. And I said, "No, I'm going. I know how to do this." So I kept it in first gear, and I'm going across like this. And I had his green tag on. Oh my God. And there was one guy at the gate, and I said, let me through. And he goes, "Are you having trouble?" And he said, None at all." I'm jerking around like a monkey. And so I stopped it early on, and then I walked over where there was this, like a camping trailer, and in comes this, at that time, probably a 1965, 66 white Cadillac, big, long white, and out gets the Supremes. And I went over and started talking to them, and they went into their little camper, and Diana Ross ends up coming out and just looking at what's going on in the surroundings, and she's got coffee. And I said, "Diana, how are you?" And I took 2 or 3 pictures of her and got her autograph, and we talked a little bit. And then I think it's Maryland was the one with kind of lighter hair, and she was an alcoholic. She said, "I'm having a 7 and 7 in a coffee cup. Would you like to join us?" And I said, "I sure would." So I'm out there with a coffee cup with a 7 and 7, and I'm drinking 7 and 7s with the Supremes. And that was fun. But then they're saying, Herb's going to have to get here pretty soon. It's getting his show's going to go on pretty soon. And here comes Herb Alpert outside, and the Tijuana Brass. The Brass weren't with him then, but Herb Alpert was. And he says, "Hey, ladies, how you doing?" and all this, and we're talking and everything. And they said, "Herb, you got to get on stage. I was going to offer you a 7-7 in a coffee cup." And Herb says, "Oh, what time is it?" He's drinking a Budweiser, I see, anyhow. And somebody yells at him, "You got to get rid of the beer, Herb. You got to get rid of the beer." And he just goes like this, just throws it behind him, and it goes bouncing across most of the end of the stage where the curtain was. So I'm not sure how many people could have seen it, but it bounced on the stage and rolled off, and he played. So that was a great deal of fun. In 1981, we were at the U.S. Open. Mary and I and several of our good Allstate friends were sitting at the Open watching tennis. And I saw Linda Carter, Wonder Woman, sitting in the crowd. I always thought, boy, that is all woman there. She is beautiful, stunning. And I wanted to get a picture, and we came down. Our seats were way up, and I came down and stood beside her, and she refused to look, and I don't blame her. And I have my camera ready. I'm getting ready to take a picture, and I must have slipped or something, and I bumped into the guy sitting next to her. He was sitting on an end row, and he had a beer, and I knocked the entire beer all over him. And I got the hell out of there because I thought, boy, the security's going to come up and drag me out of here, and they've got good reason to. And I ran back up, and as I'm getting closer to where we were in the Coliseum, Mary is sitting there with Dick Morano, Joe Gallardi, and Bill, and they're holding up plastic champagne glasses with beer in it, toasting me. Late afternoon, I found out that I was bunker line officer. I had no idea what that meant, none. And they told me I had a sector of the bunker from here to here, fairly extensive, and I was responsible for going to the bunkers and making sure everything was okay. The very first bunker I went to, there were 3 men in it, and soldiers, and it was plywood with sandbags outside of it. I heard a lot of laughter and goofing around, and I went up to it, and these guys were drinking beer, smoking joints, and having a good old time. And I said, you guys got to knock this crap off right now. Give me your beers, pour them out. I took the marijuana and just threw it, but didn't mean it went away. And one guy says, hey, Lieutenant, how long you got in country? And that crap started again. That was typical, what guys would do. And I didn't say anything, and he says, hey, Lieutenant. And then the other one says, hey, Lieutenant, we're leaving tomorrow. We're leaving tomorrow for the States. And we don't care what you tell us. And I felt obviously challenged with that. I felt kind of insecure because just the way they were talking and stuff, and I had to quell it. I had to quell what was going on. So I said, you guys, first of all, we're on 24-hour alert. It was just getting to dusk. So we're on 24-hour alert. We expect them to come in tonight, and it's sappers that would come in. Sappers are a small squad. We killed 43 of them, so it's probably a squad of about 70. They wore loincloths. They had no shoes on so they could feel tripwires to set off the flares. So as I'm talking to these guys, and they poured out their beer, but they were being smartasses about it and everything, I hear at another bunker, again, wood, but then sandbags built up around it with a visage out the front. I heard somebody shooting a rifle down further, and I said, when I come back here, I want this place squared away. And I ran down, and I talked to this one guy who was obviously had been firing his rifle because he was, like this. And I said, what are you doing? He says, I thought I saw something. And I said, what did you see? Well, I thought I saw movement. I said, did you think you saw movement or you did? Well, I'm not sure. And I said, part of this whole thing is we keep quiet and we don't tell them where we're at, because we had bunkers set up that had no men in them, and we had bunkers set up that had men in them. And if you're firing from one before anything starts, then they know you're in that bunker and they know to attack that bunker. So he settled down, didn't give me any trouble. And then I went to the other places, and I thought, this is kind of a bunch of bullshit. I'm walking along, exposing myself, walking between the bunkers, and I ended up going back to my tent. And sure enough, we got hit that night. And a story that came out of it, Platoon on Pause was the name of it, PWS. And they were caged up every night in cages with pretty thick wire. And here's what happened. A bunch of tripwires went off, meaning that they hit wires in the ground outside of our base, just outside the barbed wire, and flares went off. Found out later that wasn't the enemy coming in, that was the dog smelling the enemy. It chewed through the wire. It's amazing. It chewed its way through the wire. I don't have a clue how it could have done that. But this dog became a hero, and he went running across and really disrupted one portion of my area of operation. So that's when people started firing weapons and stuff, because the flares went off and the dog set it off, and you could see them, and they were firing at them, and I probably killed most of them. I don't know. The next day, a couple guys from that area were talking about this dog that ran across the thing, and I said, really? And I said, I just was over there the other day taking pictures of him. He said, well, it's the big guy, big tongue, and it chewed its way through the cage. I said, no shit. While we were down in the lower area of our fire support base, we were eating breakfast, and here comes the dog limping into the breakfast area. It had an AK-47 bullet in his hip. And I said, we're giving this dog a blue ribbon. I got to Stan Goff, who also was a bugler. And he came out, and we performed a ceremony in front of our tent, giving the dog, actually pinned a Purple Heart on the dog for being a hero and saving lives. Next morning, we all went out with rifles because we understood there were some of the North Vietnamese sappers that got into the big boulders up above our fire support base. And we went out, the dogs were smelling them and everything. But prior to that, I walked back up to see what that initial bunker that I went to the previous night, and all three men were laying there on top of each other, and they were dead. And I thought, oh my God, is this my fault because I wasn't tough enough with them or what? And I just never, ever forgot that. That's one thing I never forget. I felt like I was responsible for not being tough enough, not being something that somebody else could have done a better job of ensuring that they were squared away or pulled them off there and got three other people in. And I have a picture of that bunker. I never took a picture of an American body, but I took a picture of the bunker, and there's this big, huge hole in the wood. Vietnamese people are smiling and happy, and I love the kids. And I started building some relationships with the kids and the parents right outside our gate in the village. And I really enjoyed them. Parents couldn't understand me, and I couldn't understand them. But the kids, you could do stupid things. You could salute, and then all of them would salute, and things like that. And it was fun. The difficulty was knowing that a parent may have been killed that night, or you see occasionally a child with one leg or something like that you know was caused by the war. And that was hard to take, but even then you had to love them, and you had to look them in the eye and smile and be nice to them, because nobody was doing that. This place was called Nui Chom Mountain, Nuichom. And the Colonel Croson from LZ Baldy, he was the brigade commander, said, Longwell, I want you to go out there and get some information on this. I understand our troops have had quite a situation out there. It's probably the worst that I've been in charge of since I've been over here. So I flew out. I got one awesome picture of the next helicopter landing in an area they dynamited out with and it's just stubs of trees. It was triple canopy jungle. My camera couldn't even register because of the triple canopy jungle. And what we ended up landing in was a North Vietnamese battalion medical base. And in it was a line with bamboo poles holding up of little bras. And the bras were from Vietnamese girls that they took out of the villages to be nurses. And so they had bras that they had washed or whatever. There was a North Vietnamese colonel's bamboo table where I heard later that he would sit out there and drink Coca-Cola or water or whatever. And it was a surgical location also where they did surgery on wounded. When I got there, as we're flying in, our helicopter got hit by bullets. And when a helicopter turns, it makes a whap, whap sound. Whap, 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 whap. I heard bullets hitting the plane, hitting the helicopter. The door gunners, which are, I'm sitting like this, door gunners are on the side with their machine guns looking down. And they were firing. One door gunner got a bullet that came up through, it was really just not very strongly constructed, but they had metal plates down for the machine gunner. And that prevented bullets from getting up. Well, one got up anyhow and got him in the toe. And I don't know what it did to his toe. He never took his boot off, but there was a lot of blood. And I figured, boy, that toe is gone, but it can bleed and he'll live. And he kept firing. And I am now I'm thinking, okay, this is it for me. And I didn't get overly nervous. I told you before I was nervous about a lot of things, but I was getting over that. I just thought, okay, this is what's happening, and I'm going to deal with it. When we finally landed, I met a couple captains, twins from Lima, Ohio, that were drinking beer in this base camp. This former base camp had no Vietnamese in it at all anymore, and they would hold their cans like this, their beer cans like this, like they were holding a mug. And I thought that was funny. And now every time I got them with pictures, they're always like this. That was our sign. But I was so shook up by this helicopter flight in, and I was an officer. And I was going to be talking to people that had been out in this. There ended up being 75 pits on the side of this mountain. It was way up in the mountains, up in the clouds. And there were 75 pits with North Vietnamese in them. They shot at everything coming in. We had soldiers that climbed over wet mountains and precipices trying to get up to them to get them out, and they were being fired on down. I was in an area where the Slayball brothers both had radios, and I could hear them talking on the radio in that area, but not right there, but in the area. And you could hear M16s, our guns going, rifles going off, and you could hear directions from people. We need artillery, and it wasn't very clear because they were probably a mile away, but you could still hear on the radio. And I was so shook up by all this that I took off into, I'll say the jungle because it was, but I didn't go back very far. And this is something I've thought about whether I'm going to tell or not. I'm going to tell it. I may want, I got to see if I can do this. I think I can. I walked back into the jungle because I didn't want to look nervous and I didn't want to look like I was a rookie. Because at that point I was still a second lieutenant. Actually, I was a first lieutenant by then. I'd been promoted. And as I walked back in, it was all triple canopy jungle. It was dark, sort of. Occasionally you see light coming through. And I'm walking along, and all I wanted to do was get my composure. So that when I went back and talked to soldiers that had been in some fighting, that I could look like I wasn't a child. And as I'm walking along, I fell into a gravesite. It was a medical place. There had been surgery done, and they had this big, multiple gravesite of big, huge circular thing covered up with brush and stuff, and I fell right in the middle of it. And you would never know it was there, obviously. And I fell in the middle of it. It stunk. I had a million flies on me immediately, and I threw up and I cried. And I got out of that. I had threw up all over the front of me and everything, and I thought, boy, I don't know. And then I got nervous because I was lost. I'd lost my bearing, and I knew I wasn't very far in, but I couldn't hear anything. And I thought, boy, I am in deep shit trouble. And I thought, don't walk too far because you don't know where you're going. Try to reconnect on where you had been and everything. And I'm using leaves to try to get the barf off of me. And I walk a little ways over, And there's a thing in the Civil War called acoustic curtain, and that's where the atmosphere is such that you can't hear something happening close to you. And it is atmospheric. You can look it up on Google, acoustic curtain. I walked over and all of a sudden there was this river and a waterfalls. And I'm sitting there with shit all over me, and literally shit from bodies and stuff, feces and everything. I walk over to this thing, and blood. I walk over to this thing and I'm smelling fresh air. I'm seeing a beautiful waterfalls. The waterfalls wasn't all that heavy because there hadn't been rain lately. And there was, down at the bottom of this canyon was the water surging along. And I saw wildflowers. And I saw occasionally a sun would poke through. And that was a spiritual moment for me. It was like God says, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to give you something to wash away your sins and wash away your stink. So that was an important thing for me. 4 nights later, back at LZ Baldy, I tried to pray and thank God for saving me. And I didn't feel like I had earned the right, which really threw me into a frizzy. I didn't think I'd earned the right to pray because I hadn't thought about God or church in 40 years. So as I finally could see a little bit where I'd walked in, just a little bit where I'd see leaves and stuff stamped down just a touch. But it had been used, the burial mound had been used by people burying body parts and bodies and stuff like that. So it was kind of tramped down. And I ended up getting back out to where the helicopters were coming in. And I rolled around. I rolled around just when I knew I was getting to that site. I rolled around in the leaves and stuff and got most of the crap off of me, and it was okay. That's where I saw the Slaybro brothers again. And I ended up getting out of there that night, which I was so thankful for, and got back.